I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind.
My grandmama Irene never lived in a house that was owned by her family. She lived in tenant houses. They were tenant farmers and Free Will Baptist preachers, but they were rich in quilts.
All right.
She made quilts, collected quilts, and wherever they had to move, she took with her the very carefully cared for stack of quilts. Quilts a quilt is what we are. It's something beautiful and useful that is brought together from the odds and ends of our necessity, from scraps of this and that, what we got on hand, the things we inherited from our families, and the things we find along the way. And those are, this historic alliance of which we're all a part is that patchwork quilt. And it is a historic alliance. I'll tell you, as a historian of North Carolina, what is happening here in North Carolina over the past few years has not happened in a long, long time. And in fact, in some ways has never happened, really. And it's a very exciting thing. Now, education, to my mind, is central to the whole works of the thing because, one, education is at the center of North Carolina's political culture. You hear them braying about education governors every few, it's always the thing. Education. You think, well, we must be first in education spending, or at least in the top 10, don't you know it? Because they just talk about education all the time. That must be something we can brag on. And then you look at it, we've never been, above 40th, and it's usually well below that. So why all this talk of education? It's because of us. It's because of the fusion movement in North Carolina. There was an interracial movement that started right after emancipation, and it always stood for public education. It was the centerpiece, and the white conservatives thought that was a radical, crazy idea, which it is. That ordinary people should be able to, by their own efforts, pull themselves and their children up and have a better life for all, with help from the taxpayers. Dangerous. From those who've already, exactly, it is a dangerous idea if you think about it. But the reason why Governor Aycock became the education governor is because of the fusion movement.
Right.
It was a sop. They took away our voting rights. Sound familiar? And then out with sort of talk about education without a whole lot behind it. It was the dream and the hope of the slave that people poured out of slavery by the thousands and thousands and thousands and founded educational institutions right away.
That's right.
And poor whites, the same. When we worked together, education was what we worked together for, which is why our enemies have to divide us by race and will be intent on dividing us by race, and we need to understand that as we're looking into what comes next. They've always opposed public education. Right here in Raleigh in 1866, right after the war, white conservatives outlawed public education, passed a law against it, right here. And white woman named Gertrude Trappier started a school not far from here, and in defiance of the law for black and white. And other women followed her example, and soon there were half a dozen schools, and within the year of 20 or 30 schools, and the public school movement was really born interracial in defiance of the law. But when we got a new constitution in 1868, Bishop J.W. Hood and Reverend Samuel Ashley became black and white, became the assistant superintendent and the superintendent of North Carolina's first public school system. And so our movement, our historic movement, is the one that created public schools here to begin with. Always, right after the Brown decision in 1954, white conservatives, what did they want here? They wanted the taxpayers to fund their segregated little cul-de-sac academies for their children. Ain't nothing changed much in a certain way. You know, the old slogans are back: neighborhood schools, social engineering. George Wallace is the one who introduced the phrase neighborhood schools to the Southern conversation about public education. Now, we're a big, diverse state. We have to remember that. You know, we've got rural counties where desegregation never really came. You know, we've got Halifax County, little county with 3 public school systems, 2 of which are 100% African American and high 90s poor. And all the white kids in one. You know, the white kid walks down the street to the 7-Eleven and somebody runs out with a piece of chalk and draws a line around him. You know, to make sure that he's in the. You ought to look at the Roanoke Rapids graded school district sometime if you want to either cry or laugh. But so we've got that image, right? We've got Charlotte and Winston-Salem, where in many ways the struggle to have diverse common schools for everybody has failed, and we are having rapidly resegregating schools for quite a while now. And then we have places like Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill where we have fairly integrated schools somewhat and have had some success, particularly here in Wake County. You know, we lit up the country with the battle between socioeconomic integration models, which of course they just hate that. Because that, after all, is the point, right? You just don't want to have a school with 93% poor kids. If they're fighting too many challenges already, right? We got a middle-class majority in North Carolina in all the urban areas. We can have mixed schools, and they work better. That's the only reason. It's not a doctrinal point, you know. People say, you know, black children don't have to sit by white children to learn. That's just sheer demagoguery. Of course not. That's ridiculous. But who said so? That's not even the point, right? If we weren't caught in this history, it wouldn't really matter so much about the color, right? It's really about socioeconomics. But we're facing some things coming at us. We know vouchers. You know, the first thing that happens with a voucher system is on day 1 of vouchers, they write a big fat check to everybody who already deserted the public school system. So they mail wealthy people a welfare check for a considerable sum of money on day 1. And after, why would the state have any interest in paying people to take their kids out of public school? That's insane.
That's right.
Why would I want to have my tax money used to pay people to leave? I want to. Right. But anyway, we've got that coming down the pike. We've got recruitment of African American parents by groups like Parents for Educational Choice. That's going to be targeted because, of course, the cynicism, despair that comes out of the tragedy of an integration that was never fair and tragically flawed and did not work because the people running it were devoted to the old order, right? And that the cynicism and despair that grows out of that, people are tempted to say, go ahead, just throw the money over the fence, you know. But we've had a false dichotomy between building strong black institutions and building integrated schools. In North Carolina, we sued, the NAACP sued more than any other state. And we sued for equalization of funding and pay for teachers, and we sued for integration at the same time. We didn't even see it as a separate issue. It was all about the dignity of human personality and equality for all. So education has been our central struggle. It's our most promising issue because we can bring people together on it. People who may not know each other, people who think they have different interests. If we teach well and think clearly and explain ourselves and make alliances, then education can be the issue that we can win on, because even people who don't agree with us on much else can be brought together on education, because everybody cares about the children. Everybody knows we're all in this together. Deep down, they know and they know that if we don't have a strong public school system, we won't have a strong economy. You know, we won't have a well-educated workforce. We won't have the kind of appreciation for the good things in life that we need. There's an old African proverb. It says, "We'll know how the story goes when the fight starts."
All right.
If you want to know how it's all going to go down and who's who, don't pay attention to the color of the jersey.
That's right.
Wait till tip-off.
Yeah.
See who's playing with who.
Yeah.
We'll know how the story goes when the fight starts.
Fight, fight,
And I'm very proud to be fighting. We fight! We fight!
we fight, we fight.
So I'm going to start with the good news first. North Carolina has always been a national model for affordable higher education. In 2000, we were one of 5 states to receive an A grade for affordability and a national report on state performance in higher education. And of those 5, we were one of only 2 to receive such a rating while having an average family income below the national average. Affordability has been the standard of our state for centuries. It was just 45 minutes down the road from here where the first public university in the country was founded, where North Carolina recognized the potential of educating young people to enhance economic and social progress in our state. Even our Constitution includes a promise of higher education that is as close to free as practicable. Our state has a history of recognizing the absolute necessity of fostering the potential of all young people through accessible further education. Though recently, it seems that this clarity has been lost. From 2001 to 2011, tuition and fees throughout the UNC system have increased 132% and 104% at community colleges. Almost half of that increase has happened in the last 3 years.
That's right.
3 years when I was at university. These dramatic increases are matched by equally devastating cuts to financial aid assistance. Last year, need-based aid was cut by almost 1/4 across the UNC system. For some schools, especially historically black colleges and universities like A&T, where 80% of students receive needs-based aid, these cuts have had an even more dramatic effect. It is not only certain schools who bear the unequal burden. No matter what institution they attend, it is the lowest income North Carolinians, the working class, those who attend college in the lowest numbers, who suffer the largest consequences of such policies. Current trends are showing a shift of priority away from uplifting the children of poor and working class families through need-based aid and instead putting available funding towards merit-based scholarship. This shift only works to reinforce current inequalities by providing opportunities to those who already have the means to attend universities.
Right.
It comes as no surprise that although college enrollment continues to increase, the gap in attendance rates between affluent and low-income students has widened, even among those who are prepared academically for college.
That's right.
For some, the cost alone makes even applying to college seem a waste. And for those who do enroll, the challenges they face and sacrifices they make are unprecedented. We are accumulating significant debt and are borrowing at record amounts. We are working more hours than ever before to pay college expenses. While selecting colleges, intellectual interests and educational goals are no longer our priority, but instead the depths of our families' pockets become the deciding factor in what school we will attend.
All right.
But what must be the most ironic part is that as higher education becomes less and less accessible, a college degree is becoming more and more indispensable to today's world. By 2018, it is projected that nearly 60% of North Carolina jobs will require some amount of higher education. Over the past 3 decades, the inextricable link between higher education and economic mobility has become undeniably clear. For 30 years, the average income of those with a high school degree or less has remained more or less the same, while North Carolinians with a bachelor's degree or higher have seen an income increase of over 30%. It is because of this undeniable correlation between educational opportunity and income that only 4% of families living below the poverty line in 2001 had a bachelor's degree or higher. Today, state investment in higher education is at a 40-year low. If our state legislators are serious about breaking the cycle of poverty in North Carolina, about investing in people, then accessibility to higher education must become a priority once again. To invest in the potential of every young person is to invest in the well-being of all people in North Carolina.
That's right.
But instead, our legislators are shutting doors of opportunity. On undocumented immigrant youth who have been locked out of public institutions through mandatory out-of-state tuition, and who each year are told that their potential is less important by bills passed that criminalize their communities and give them second-rate status at community colleges. They're shutting doors of opportunity on poor and low-income students whose futures are limited by the fear of unpayable debt and unbearable financial burden on their families. Instead of working to break the cycle of poverty, our legislators are feeding it. They feed the cycle with every penny spent on the military-industrial complex rather than on suitable salaries for educators and advisors. With every penny spent on corporate tax breaks rather than need-based aid programs. And with every penny spent on keeping people on death row rather than keeping students in school. This is no time to sit idly, to dismiss these policies as necessities in times of economic trouble. This is not the first time our country has suffered a recession, and is certainly not the last. But it is the decisions that we make during times of struggle that define our future. Yes. During the recession of the early 1990s, tuition increases were used as the Band-Aid solution across the country, but that Band-Aid became the status quo when tuition never returned to its previous cost. We must never forget that the doors we allow to close today are not temporary. They are not only determining the opportunities for my generation, but for every generation that follows mine. As we hear, as we move forward and as we're going to hear the shallow justifications for forcing working families and students to bear the burden, let us not forget to step back and look at all of the changes occurring in North Carolina higher education. While tuition increases and financial aid decreases, university administrators are being paid like CEOs. That's right. NC State's chancellor received a 14.6% raise last week, earning him $495,000 a year. Instead of looking to students, faculty, and workers in our universities, we are prioritizing businessmen like Art Pope to set the 5-year vision for our public higher education. We are defunding and at some schools dismantling programs of study that do not directly equate to future career paths, especially the studies of marginalized groups such as African American studies and women's studies. If our university system is run like a business, then that makes the student a customer. In the eyes of a business, customers are not equal. They're not individuals with potential to be fostered. No, to a business, a customer's value is based on their potential profit. That's right. So this is what I ask of you today. Will we stand by idly and accept the future? No. Will we allow our state to turn its back on a history of accessibility, a history of recognizing that higher education must not be a privilege for the few, but a right for us all? Will we claim our right provided by the Constitution of North Carolina to a free as practical education? We have too long been fighting the racism and classism that fills our state policies to go back now. To allow our higher education system that should be the great equalizer to instead reinforce current inequalities. Here in the People's House, we must take a stand. I'll see y'all at HKonJ.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here and good to be a part of this movement.
Amen.
So, where does criminal justice intersect with poverty? It intersects at a place called mass incarceration. Imagine the following. 1 in 5 of the men you knew had a prison record. Members of your race were 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than those of the majority race. Those incarcerated had a much harder time working and taking care of their children. Their children were in turn more likely to commit crime, and more likely to be incarcerated as a result. These imaginings describe reality in our poorest African American communities. I had the good fortune to be able to travel to Geneva, Switzerland this past summer as a part of the National NAACP Committee on Voter Disenfranchisement, and we took our fight to the UN. And we did that simply because although we thought that voter rights ought to be given to people after they've completed their time and paid their time to society, we thought that it was so important that we took the voting conversation to the UN because we saw it as a human rights tragedy.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, Dad.
So I say that not only are we going to be talking about changing policy at the legislature around African American incarceration, but this whole issue of mass incarceration is a human rights tragedy.
That's right.
Yes.
Mass incarceration refers to arrest, charging, and sentencing practices that result in the widespread incarceration of minor offenders for significant periods of time.
That's right.
Drug offenders are treated the worst of all.
That's right.
Anyone who sells drugs is presumed to be a remorseless urban predator,
Yeah.
and a series of nonviolent drug offenses can easily land an offender in state prison in North Carolina. Mass incarceration is to punishment what amputation is to surgery.
That's right. Tell it. Yes. That's right.
Currently, 57% of the state prison population is African American, despite the fact that African Americans only constitute 21% of the state's population. The ratio of African Americans to whites in North Carolina in jails is 5.4 to 1. In Charlotte, it's 11.3 to 1. In Wake County, it's 12.9 to 1. So here's some of the things that happens as a collateral damage to mass incarceration. Number one, it disrupts family ties,
Yeah.
increases poverty, and ultimately increases crime.
Yes.
It also is more likely that the children of those incarcerated will follow into the incarcerated parents' footsteps.
Yes.
Mass incarceration weakens poor communities economically. Incarceration significantly reduces the wages, employment, and annual earnings of former inmates, even though their economic opportunities are extremely poor to begin with. Now get this. One study shows that if you are an African American and you have a criminal background, that you decrease your chances of work by 60%.
Yeah.
Now get this. The same study showed that a white applicant with a criminal record has as good a chance of getting a job as an African American without a criminal record.
That's right.
Mass incarceration also weakens African American families. By the year 2000, over 1 million black children, 9% of those under 18, had a father in prison or jail. Mass incarceration hits children in North Carolina especially hard.
Yeah.
The risk of family instability and economic strain, even after controlling for risk factors such as lack of education, substance abuse, etc. Mass incarceration directly affects the health of those living in North Carolina.
That's right.
One North Carolina study showed that the rates of sexually transmitted infections in teenage pregnancies consistently increase as incarceration rates move higher. North Carolina studies have shown that minority youth are more likely to have been arrested, detained, and committed to a training school than white youth. So if we look at the collateral consequences, if we look at the rippling effect of this mass incarceration, it, as we know, impacts people of color more than any other race in North Carolina. So as we move forward, I'll also serve as a part of the Second Chance Alliance, and we'll be bringing policy changes to the legislature this year as part of our Lobby Day efforts in April, Second Chance Lobby Day. Also, currently, as you know, part of the Criminal Justice Chair for the NAACP as a partnership in that effort. So as we move forward with these agenda items, we ask that you support those as you see the harm that it's causing. Thank you very much.
I want to talk about the Racial Justice Act. Just last year, I was hoping and praying that I wouldn't have to stand up here and demand that we again march and talk about upholding the Racial Justice Act.
Yeah.
I thought we would not have to deal with repeal of the Racial Justice Act again after so much has happened. As we know, the Racial Justice Act deals with capital punishment.
Yeah.
And capital punishment is for people without capital.
That's right. That's right.
So,
That's right.
as we had great things that happened this year, last year, we had two great rulings. You know, since 2009, when the General Assembly passed the Racial Justice Act, there's been two hearings. And in both of these hearings, Judge Weeks found that race played a major factor in these people getting a death sentence.
That's right.
And not only did he, after the first ruling in April, the General Assembly came back and they tried to repeal the Racial Justice Act, and they came out with a different version of it to take away statistical evidence, saying that you can't, that cannot be the basis of the evidence. Judge Weeks had another hearing on 3 more cases, and in December he ruled, even beside the fact of the old Racial Justice Act, under the new law, he still found that race played a major factor. And, you know, to sit in the courtroom and listen to prosecutors get up and tell lies about how they did not use race, and knowing that they did use race, and to exclude African Americans off juries when they had it wrote in their files.
That's right.
And had it wrote so blatantly, you know, that even calling them winos and black folk and what community they lived in to keep them off the jury. And, you know, it was just amazing that just December, Governor Perdue pardoned the Wilmington 10. And part of that history of prosecutors putting things in their notes. That was 40 years ago.
That's right. Go ahead.
And we're talking not 40 years ago in these cases, we're talking just almost 10 or 15 years ago. And they're still doing it, even today.
That's right, yeah.
They're still using race. So we have to continue to demand that the Racial Justice Act stand. We don't want a repeal of the Racial Justice Act. And we have to let them know it right now. Because if they repeal the Racial Justice Act, then it wouldn't, they would start killing people that's
right.
on death row right now. Even though they know race was the major factor for most of them being on death row, which is wrong. And we have a system that's broken. We got to fix it. It's not fixed just with the racial justice.
That's
Act.
right.
You know, and the bigger problem is not just about the death penalty.
Yeah.
It's about all these facts that Dennis was just talking about.
Yeah.
All that is race-based. And it's all because people don't have money
That's right.
to fight this system. And it's about the economical factors.
That's right, bring it back home.
So we have to realize and take a stand and make sure that they understand, that we understand what the fight is about. And that justice demand that they give justice to all people, not some people, but to all people.
That's right.
Because I wouldn't be here today if it were not for God and the people who stood for me. So we have to continue to fight.
I want to do something quickly. I want you to start on this side and just call out your name and the organization, because this was an organizational briefing this morning. So we'll know. Just say it. He's filming. Go ahead. Start. Yes.
Dream Team.
Loud. Yeah.
Ben Burke, Community Success.
NS Gaddy, Community Success.
Yeah.
Sylvia Barnes, NAACP.
Laurel Ashton, Student Action with Workers.
Pastor Larry Reed, Chapel Hill NAACP.
Christina Jones, NAACP.
Ernestine Lewis, NAACP. Minister Dolores Sarah, NAACP.
Same
Arlington.
city. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Alamance County.
Sonny Barnes, North Carolina Black Women Empowerment Network, NAACP, and I work for Christ.
Right.
Gerald Silver with the Raleigh Ministerial Alliance.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, preacher.
Nikki Makes, Google Carolina Justice Policy Center. Sarah Callahan, Coalition for Alternatives to the Death Penalty.
Nice and loud.
Darrell Hunt, North Carolina Alternatives to the Death Penalty.
Start on the front row. Come on across. Say it.
With me, Geeta Kapoor, attorney in Durham, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Campbell Law School.
Olinda Gillis, Moore County President.
Kevin Smith, Moore County, NAACP.
Let me go here.
Your name and where you're from?
Let me go here.
Right here. Go ahead.
Yes.
Miriam Thompson, Chapel Hill Carborough, NAACP, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Jake Gellergood, Democracy North Carolina.
Dick Paddock, Southern Anti-Racism Network.
Rebecca Judge, Duplin County, NAACP. Mary Ann Herring, Duplin County, NAACP.
Clarence Herring, Duplin County, NAACP.
Donnie Miller, Moore County, NAACP.
Betty Turner, Lee County, NAACP.
My sister. Okay.
Let's start here. Go ahead.
T. Anthony Spearman, NAACP, Hickory Branch, NAACP, State Chapter, Clinton Tabernacle African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, and all of the above. We fight, we fight, we fight, we fight, we fight.
Reverend HKonJ, Charlotte, North Carolina Red Tails. We fight, we fight, we fight.
Frank Jones, Wilson, NAACP.
Bob Zellner, Wilson, North Carolina, NAACP, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
James Pugh, NAACP and Eastern Civic Group.
All right.
New Hanover County, NAACP.
Charles Up Church, Wendell Wake County President.
Imani Johnson, Lee County, NAACP.
Bishop Mike Miller, Lee County, NAACP. We fight, we fight, we fight, we fight.
Sir, would you go again, please? Go ahead. Do yours. Yeah.
James Pugh, Eastern Civic Group, and NAACP, Berkeley County.
We got just a few minutes. Stay if you can. We just want to do this for the video.
Billy Sutter, NAACP, Hickory, North Carolina, and Citizens for Equity in Government, Hickory, North Carolina. And we fight.
Yes, sir.
Alfonso Chisholm, Hickory, North Carolina, NAACP.
Al McShirley, Chapel Hill, NAACP. We fight!
James Andrews, North Carolina State FML CIO.
You fight!
Yes, indeed.
Saladin Muhammad, Black Workers for Justice, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Good, go.
Tim Tyson, Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University, and the NAACP. Just liable to fight.
Rodney Harrington, Harnett County, NAACP. We fight.
We fight.
Carl White, Hertford County, NAACP, and everything that's been talked about is alive in Hertford County.
Reverend Barber, I'm from Berkeley County, the 5th poorest county in the state of North Carolina. Now, as I mentioned there, I'm at the civic group, Eastern Civic Group, which consists of 21 counties. And we met last Saturday. And I'm encouraging my county commissioners, we have 5, every time we meet once a month, to be there. Because it's a time now that counties, we need to come together.
Yes, sir.
What I'm talking about when we're talking about the taxes, you all listen to me. When Jesus was here, he recognized earthly authority. When he turned the water to wine, he didn't say you all go ahead and drink. He said, go up to the authority and let them approve that is wine. What you got to do is talk to our House, Senate, send them a message that Jesus paid taxes. Is that right, Reverend?
Talk to him.
When the disciples said, Lord, I have paid my taxes, he told them, go down to the lake. Get that corn out of that fish's mouth. Pay your taxes and pay mine. But I want y'all to understand, Jesus wants you to be rich. He wants you to be rich. But it's how you administrate it. Every rich person in the state of North Carolina can pay his and her taxes.
Yes, sir.
And will still be rich.
Yes, that's right.
And if they're paid on their prorated basis, just like the poor man and the middle class man, they'll still be rich. What I'm talking about, you got more money than you need. So let's look at it. Let's send the message.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everybody pay taxes, but let the rich pay their taxes on a prorated basis like the poor man.
Yes.
Now when we're talking about health care, how many preachers in here? But you preachers need to be talking about. When the power was when the man was on the Jericho Road, beaten and robbed, laying half dead.
Go ahead.
And when the church folk went on by. But the man didn't have no church on his mind, was traveling.
That's right.
What did he do?
He took care of
He had compassion on the man.
That's what he did.
Carried him put what he had on him and carried him to the end. And told me, y'all look out.
Yes, he did.
When I come back, I'll pay.
Yes, sir.
Pay
Is that right?
That's right. Pay for it.
That's what it said?
That's what it said.
Let me put it this way, folks. I want you all to know that when you take money out of the Medicare, Social Security, and all that, you know what you're doing? You talking about the poor man that's beating on the road. Whole lot of us on the road, laying on the road, half dead.
That's right.
Poverty have put us in there. But they talking about taking it out. Now let me put it this way. Poverty, I'm going to say this in I'm going to say that. I'm going to let you go.
All right, go ahead, Lee. We got one more amen.
What we talking about?
Go ahead.
Poverty.
Yeah.
You preachers need to preach this. Diabetes.
There you go.
Ladders. Well, then poverty.
Yeah.
when he went up to Darby's house and was begging for the crumbs. Didn't even talk about what was on his table. Nowhere. Begging for the crumbs.
That's right.
Which he done threw it away.
Lord have mercy.
And then what do you give? They set the dogs on it. Y'all understand what I'm saying?
Go ahead now.
You got to realize you preachers need to preach. Darby died and went to heaven. Rich man. Lazarus died and went to Darby died went to hell.
Okay.
Lazarus died went to heaven.
That's right.
It was a big gulf between them, but it brought it to the point. Don't care how much money you got, whatever you got, all you can do, you can make a living out of it.
Yeah.
Man got $1 million in his pocket, now go in the restaurant, he can't, that's all he needs, and come on out. Die, and what we're gonna happen to the $1 million? Somebody else be fighting.
That's right.
The thing we need to do is think, and a lot of us is victims of that. When you got 10 and 12 suits in the wardrobe, don't even need them. 5 cars, you don't even need 5 cars. Just need one good car.
Yes, sir.
Tell you where you want to go. Other than rather be on the lot for sale.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You even have double that because that was not last year. But if you look at that crowd, you might think you're at the Million Man March, or you might think you're at some big national, international march. But that's right here in North Carolina, that HKonJ, to promote HKonJ. You should say, why are we here? Every MLK celebration this year should have HKonJ flyers. There should be someone there on the program to talk about HKonJ. Now, some of our presidents around the state, you have your own MLK programs. We want to make sure that's happening. If you don't have your own MLK programs, we want you to establish a relationship with those who are, and make sure there are flyers, make sure there are pledge forms at those HKonJ, at those MLK events.